Member for Melton.
Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I should start by saying how difficult it is to contribute after that unbelievable contribution by the member for Hastings, and I thank him for it. And it's because of members like the member for Hastings that, passing bills in this chamber and in this parliament will make it better for not only him and his wife, but for his constituents and for Victorians right across this state. And I can't commend him enough on his efforts and his contribution. It was just amazing. So thank you to the member for Hastings. Acting Speaker, I also want to thank the Attorney General in the other place, Minister Symes, for bringing this bill forward, and all of her staff that worked on this bill. Thank you for all of your efforts. It's an important bill, and it's truly a reformative work, and I'm very pleased to be part of the team that is making the system more efficient, fair and sensitive to the needs of the victims, and we just heard that in the member for Hastings' contribution, and of course for witnesses, not just victims, but for witnesses that have to give evidence in committal hearings and in other hearings, and the trauma that goes with that. And I don't know if anyone's been directly involved in a committal hearing, but I have, and it was a sexual offence case, and I've got to say it's traumatic for everyone that's involved. And they're very difficult matters to deal with. I should start by saying I'm pleased that the opposition are not opposing this bill. I will respond to. I don't see the need to accept the recent amendments from the member for Malvern, because I think in dealing with those amendments we're just delaying the passing of this bill in this House, and I just don't think that that's what any of us want to do. And I think with the opposition not opposing, they don't wish to delay it either. So I think we should just get on and have the debate, and at the end of the week we'll vote on it. I want to start by, and I think it was the member for Laverton that raised it earlier, I want to commend all the legal minds around our state, and in particular our community legal aid services, and I want to give a shout out to the legal aid services that work in the Brimbank Melton area, Community Plus, who do a fantastic job for our constituents, and also West Justice, who support people in the western suburbs, not only with legal support but other supports, and engaging with Orange Door, and Orange Door have been mentioned many times, but there's many agencies that support the people in need in regard to these types of situations, and we've mentioned family violence a lot, and of course it's one of the biggest issues. I think 40% of police work is family violence situation, and we have to change our ways. We have to change our culture, and we have to start that at younger ages, and right through the system we have to change in the way that we rear our kids and allow our kids to do things during the course of their growing up into young males and young men and then adult men, and thinking that they can get away with family violence and violence in general. We have to change our culture. The role of committal processes is something that affects our justice system, but it might not be well known to many, particularly those who have never had reason to encounter this system before. And before we had independent police or prosecutors, and way back then, there needed to be a way to make sure that cases had enough evidence to go to trial, and that's how the committal processes began. And as a check to make sure only cases with some merit moved forward, that there was some basis to take it to a higher court. And it was intended to filter out cases that may not have been fit for a broader trial or a greater trial. So the job of the magistrate in a committal hearing was to decide whether the evidence was strong enough to support a possible conviction for a serious crime. And of course the bar for this decision was set pretty low, and just enough to weed out only the weakest cases. And I think in a lot of sexual offences cases you'll find that in committal hearings most of them are referred on to the higher court because I think you'll find that magistrates, in regard to the evidence that they hear in a committal hearing, think that the matter generally should go before a jury and allow the jury to decide on the basis of the evidence that they had heard. And that's my understanding and experiences around sexual offence cases, that a lot of them are referred on to the higher courts to allow juries to deal with it. So if we fast forward to today and the committals process in the way that it's evolved, it is something like a mini trial, and the prosecution presents their case. The witnesses can be questioned and cross-examined, and the magistrate does a lot of the same work that would happen later in the case when it goes to the higher courts. And again, that in itself just shows that we're duplicating, the giving of the evidence by the victim, by witnesses, which is very traumatic, subject to whatever the case may be. It is very traumatic, and we just duplicate it, and it's lengthy, it's resource intensive, and as I say, it re-traumatises victims and witnesses if we have to put them through a couple of trials, one being the committal and then one being the bigger trial at a later date. And of course it can delay the outcome for victims because of a committal process and then being moved on to the higher court or the bigger trial. You can delay an outcome. And again, if we refer back to the previous contribution by the member for Hastings, people are traumatised enough. It changes their life, changes their families' lives. And he contributed in that way in regard to his wife's situation, and who didn't want to proceed with a court case or a committal hearing and didn't want the offender charged because of the trauma that was involved. And people that have been offended like that live with it every day. And there's no perfect outcome, unfortunately. So, Acting Speaker, we've heard in the previous debate that the 2020 Victorian Law Reform Commission report revealed that the discharge rate at the committal stage is very low. It's only about 1 or 2%. And as I said, depending on the type of committal hearing it is and what they're hearing, I made reference before to most of the sexual offences cases would be referred on to the higher case, the higher court, to deal with these matters. And of course, the Office of Public Prosecutions, the OPP, has a rigorous process for ensuring prosecutions are viable, that they're appropriate, and of course that they're in the public interest. And one major reason for the low rate of cases being dismissed during committals is the existence of the independent OPP. And of course this office carefully assesses each case using a set of criteria that outlined in the Director's policy, which is publicly available online. And these criteria include evaluating the strength of the evidence, the likelihood of securing a conviction, and whether pursuing charges aligns with the public interest. And again, cost factors must come into that, and of course the OPP would review a matter that may be sent for trial on the cost of that and whether there would be the greater potential of an outcome of a conviction. And of course, Acting Speaker, even if a magistrate decides that a case does not meet the threshold for trial, the Director of Public Prosecutions has the authority to override that and directly indict the case to be heard in a higher court. That may not happen very often, but that certainly can happen. And in all, there 51 recommendations were made by the Victorian Law Reform Commission report. And Acting Speaker, the bill addresses these inefficiencies and it ensures a justice system that truly serves its purpose. And again, that's why this bill is so important in regard to supporting the victims, making it a fairer system, reducing duplication, reducing cost, hopefully hearing cases in the higher courts in a quicker manner, and hopefully having better outcomes, that people have less trauma. This is a very important bill, and I commend this bill to the House.